the only gainers of these entire things are only professionals, neither nor the taxpayers in this country. And this has been going on for years and years. Coming to going forward, the levy of construction service legal position, that whether the very levy of the GST on construction service even today, whether it is valid or not, I will not take much time because I have to cover the development rights. In my opinion, the very constitutional validity of the levy of GST on the entire construction service is susceptible to very serious challenge. Schedule 2 was never a charging provision. Schedule 2 was never a deemed supply. Schedule 2, which categorizes the supply into supply of goods or supply of service, was merely a categorization or classification schedule. It was never intended to be a charging provision. Whatever is mentioned under Schedule 2, that will become taxable. That was never the case. We presumed that this is mentioned in the Schedule 2. Unless a particular activity or transaction fulfills the condition of Section 7(1), supply, it is an inclusive definition. And the two prerequisites for us activity or transaction to become a taxable supply are: one, it should be of the description mentioned in the obviously in the transfer, sale, removal, etc., and lease, etc. But it should be for a consideration, and it should be in the furtherance of the course or business. But again, that supply should be of the goods or services or both. When I am selling even the under construction property, that under construction property is not goods. It still remains an it is not, definitely it is not the goods. Just because it is being sold before completion certificate, it does not become goods or service. It is all works contract are basically fundamentally service. Definitely they are not goods, but it is not even a service when I am selling under construction property. That's why it was put under declared service under Section 66E. It was deemed to be service. That deeming fiction is actually absent under the CGST Act, and the Schedule 2 cannot be the deeming fiction. Schedule 2 will come into play if basically the transaction is supply. So therefore, we are again into running in the circle. I cannot call my activity of selling the under construction flat as a taxable supply by resort to Schedule 2. Because Schedule 2 is not a deeming fiction. I have to fulfill Section 7. If I cannot fulfill Section 7, then Schedule 2 will not come into play. So in my opinion, and this has been also affirmed, this position has been affirmed by the government by amending it retrospectively, that if a transaction is, an activity or transaction is a supply in terms of subsection 1, then only it should be classified as a supply of goods or supply of service under Schedule 2. This has been actually recognized by the government because it was the government intention to classify it, unlike Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is a deeming provision that even if there is no consideration, the tax liability can arise in respect of certain specified 5 transactions. Schedule 2 is not on that line. And therefore, in my opinion, today, entry 5B of Schedule 2, the construction service, whereby we are all paying service tax on the basis, GST on the basis of that rate with Section 7, it can be probably a non-starter after amendment also. It has been amended. And Article 366(29)(a), definitely entry 5B is directly flying on the face of Article 366(29)(a). It is against the Constitution. Today, it is possible to take a stand that not a single builder developer on any of his construction contract is liable to pay the GST. It may sound very, very strange and absurd, but I mean, this is the serious view which we have been taking. It is my view. Okay, it is for the court to decide the final call, but the constitutional validity which has been accepted by the validity of the levy on the construction activity accepted by the all across the country may have to be revisited, may need some reconsideration. With this, I come to the last topic of the today, transfer of development rights, which has been this development right transfer. There are 3 terms which are important here. One is development rights, the second is the FSI, and the third one is the transferable development rights. This whole issue can be summed up in one question, that whether development rights or FSI or TDR come within the scope of the immovable property or not. If yes, then the liability to pay tax cannot arise. Let me, before I proceed with this, let me clarify here. Let me first take up the notification. Serial number 3, amending address of serial number 3 of the notification and with the reverse charge. There are three aspects of development rights which are covered by the new scheme of the thing. One, the development rights which are being transferred under a typical JDA arrangement from the by the landowner to the developer. One, taxability of that. Two, the sale or supply of the TDR. That is another, common activity in Mumbai. That is second. And the third is when the society redevelopment takes place, where the FSI available of the society, which are actually passed on to the builder, developer, for construction of the sellable area, which is sales on the payment of the tax. In these three contexts, this issue arises. And what has been done? Exemption has been given to the supply of the development rights or FSI or TDR on the condition that post CC, whatever units are sold, the GST will be payable on the proportionate development rights or FSI, etc. to those units which are sold post CC. Now, how the valuation is to be done? So it is provided that the valuation of such development right, which is nothing but the if it can be called as a consideration, it is nothing but the consideration in kind. Then how the valuation has to be done? The valuation shall be on the basis of the value of the flats sold at the material time at the next nearest possible time. On that basis, the valuation of this proportionate development rights is to be undertaken. This is the scheme of the thing. Everybody appears to be quite comfortable with this without really looking into it, whether we tax professionals, whether the taxpayers, without really looking into it, that how far this entire proposition is valid in the eyes of law. Whether the GST levy can be attracted on the development rights at all, because exemption follows the levy. Exemption does not presuppose the levy. By granting the exemption, it is very well possible for the government to presume the levy, and then we are granting you the exemption and keeping everybody in the good mood. That is possible for the government. Government has been doing this for long. Every government has done it, even in excise and service tax also. That is a routine thing which the revenue has been resorting to. But from the taxpayer's perspective, from the legal perspective, unless there is a levy, there cannot be exemption, because then I don't need the exemption. And exemption follows the levy. Exemption cannot create or presuppose the levy. So I am not concerned with what is written in the entry 3 of this notification 3 by 2019 or 6 by 2019. The issue needs to be independently actually considered, whether development rights or TDR or FSI, whether they can be subjected to tax at all or not. In the typical joint development agreements, as we have seen, the allotment of constructed area takes place in lieu of development rights. There is 100% land owned by a landowner. Normally he says, okay, on 40% I am transferring the development rights in your favor, subject to you either actually giving me some constructed area, or it is a revenue sharing model, it can be area sharing model, or it can be the mixture of both. Then we have to see the levy of GST from both the angle, from the landowner perspective and from the developer perspective. But before that, from landowner, what is being passed on is the development rights in the certain area. Similarly, in the transferable development rights, TDR, which is basically sort of an instrument, something like sale certificate, which is generated by the competent authority when certain activities are undertaken by the builder, who's either because his private land has been of a person has been taken over, or some projects have been undertaken under SRA or MADA. And in lieu of the cash consideration, the transferable development rights are generated through a certificate in favor of that particular person, whether builder or otherwise, which he can either exploit for the construction subject to the regulation and in the area which is actually specified, subject to that, or he can trade it in the market just like any other said certificate. The question here is whether the GST can be actually on this, can be levied on this or not. Friends, on this aspect, if I have to summarize my view, first of all, one has to go through whether development rights can be said to be arising or the benefit arising from or the right arising from the land or not. If the answer is yes, then land obviously is covered by the immobile property. Neither the term immobile property nor the term land has been defined under the CGST Act. Still, Schedule 3, Entry 5 excludes sale of land and sale of building other than under construction from the scope of the levy. As you are aware, Schedule 3 speaks about an activity or transaction, neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So sale of land is excluded because obviously it is beyond constitution to levy GST on the sale of land because GST is only on the goods or services or both. I will start with this. First of all, in my personal opinion, even without sale of land or sale of building having mentioned under the Schedule 3, it could never have been subjected to the GST at all. Because the very constitutionally GST can be levied only on the supply of goods or services. Just because land or building are not coming within the scope of the definition of goods, it could not have come within the scope of the services, which says services means anything other than goods. This was the absolutely false apprehension or fear voiced by everybody when the GST was being introduced, which led to the inclusion of this item under Schedule 3, which was unnecessary and which has created a host of the problems, and problems will continue to be arising only because of these entries are excluded. These items are excluded under Schedule 3 because they are mentioned under, they are excluded from the scope of it. There was no necessity. In no circumstances, government could have charged the GST on the sale of land or sale of building by treating them as a services and without specifically excluded them. Constitutional did not permit that. That is the first aspect. Now, sale of land having been excluded from the scope of the levy, one has to see whether the land definition, land is not defined, but if you take the definition from the Land Acquisition Act or from the Bombay Land Revenue Code or a host of other judgments, the land is always defined to mean it includes benefit to arise out of land. Isn't the TDR or FSI is benefit arising out of land? In the Cheda Housing Development Corporation case, Bombay High Court, even in the context of FSI or TDR, they have posed the very question, can FSI or TDR be said to be a benefit arising from the land? High Court, referring to the Sikandar versus Bahadur judgment, referring to the Oudh High Court judgment in Ram Jeevan and Hanuman Prasad, Allahabad High Court judgment in the Srimati Draupadi Devi versus Ramdas, High Court said that from this judgment, what appears is that a benefit arising from the land is an immovable property. FSI TDR being a benefit arising from the land, consequently must be held to be the immovable property. These observations of the High Court in the context of the issue before it are equally relevant and valid when we examine the taxability of the development rights. There are in Safia B, Supreme Court said, Safra B Mohammad Hussain, they said land includes right in or over land and all benefit to arise out of the land. Supreme Court in Anand Bihara versus State of Orissa said that right to enter in that estate which a person does not own and take away fish therefrom is a profit a pendre, which is in turn regarded as a benefit to arise out of land. In Santabai versus State of Bombay, the Supreme Court said that right to enter upon land and cut tree is a benefit arising out of land. There are quite a few other judgments. I'm not going into this. The sum and substance of this judgment is that FSI or TDR or development rights, even if you go by the development rights definition under the Maharashtra Regional Development and Town Planning Act, MRTP Act, and the expression which is explained by the Bombay High Court and other High Court judgments, what is development right and what is FSI, what is the difference between FSI and TDR, it makes it very clear that all these three owe their existence to the continuing ownership of a land. They arise out of the land. they cannot exist, dehorse the land. Unless there is a land, they cannot. Even TDR also, because when actually I am undertaking some activity, the land which belong to me, which has been encroached upon, suppose, or taken over by the government, it is on account of that this TDR is actually issued to me. As a matter of fact, in one of the cases involving the major player in the Bombay city, the commissioner appeal last year, a few months back, has clearly held in favor that TDR cannot be subjected to the service tax. And the same view applies, same position applies even under the GST also. Whether this order, obviously this would be challenged before the tribunal. By now it would have been challenged also, but that is beside the point. So once the development rights are held to be the benefit arising out of the land, then obviously land being covered by the definition of immobile property, no GST can be said to be attracted on that. Whether we look at it from the constitutional perspective, the scope of Article 246A, staying the platform for the levy, making the laws for the levy of the GST, whether we look at it from the statutory perspective and scheme of the thing of Section 7, supply, Section 9, charging section, there is no provision, no article which provides for the levy of GST on transferable development rights or FSI. And with this view of the matter, no doubt this particular issue about the state's powers and union powers with regard to the levy of tax on the land and building are actually the issues pending before the 11 judges bench in Mineral Development Corporation in the context of the royalty on mining. But the fate of this judgment, the what Supreme Court ultimately the larger bench decides, I think they are planning to now shift it to the 15 judges bench, this crucial issue. Even in the context of Builder Association of Navi Mumbai, where the matter, we are fighting that case in Supreme Court, where the CIDCO, the Bombay High Court judgment went against the, the petitioners with regard to the salami and the rental, which has been taken by the CIDCO for the allotment of the residential plot. The levy has been challenged. All these issues ultimately may depend upon the outcome, may depend upon the 15 judges. Though there are many other arguments available, one of the crucial argument is about the constitutional scheme of the taxation powers, and which is pending before the larger bench of the Supreme Court in Mineral Development Corporation. Keeping this in mind, but today definitely a stand can be taken, albeit debatable, disputable, but these are all disputed issues. This will have to be. I'm only explaining the legal position or an alternative view. And with this thing in mind, to sum up, FSI or development rights or TDR, the very supply of that cannot be subjected to tax at all. There cannot be GST on, there is no levy on it. That being the case, the exemption or prescription of the reverse charge mechanism, making the promoter developer liable to tax under certain circumstances by working out the value of the proportionate FSI is absolutely illegal and beyond the scope of the powers vested. So it is unconstitutional. Similarly, landowner developer. Landowner developer, this is a new term. By coining a description, by inventing a description, one cannot invent the levy. By calling the landowner a landowner developer, I cannot put him at par with the developer actually who is undertaking the construction activity. And therefore, before issue of the occupation certificate, whatever constructed area is received by the landowner from the developer, which he turns in the sales, which he sells in the market, on which the levy of tax at the 1% or 5%, which is being prescribed through the notification, is absolutely unconstitutional. If you even read it in the context of 5B, Schedule 2, can a landowner who is selling his share of the constructed area received from the builder who has not yet received the completion certificate or occupancy OC. I'm actually using this. I know both are absolutely independent terms. I'm just using it in a simple manner. Who has not received this, can the landowner be made liable to pay the tax on that? Can it be said that landowner is entering into a service contract, construction contract with the buyer who is buying his property? Is it not for him the resale of the immobile property? Does it lose its character as an immobile property just because the completion certificate is not issued or first occupancy has not arrived? The answer, in my opinion, is no. A landowner does not enter into a service contract for construction while selling his share of the property to any independent buyer. There is a condition called consensus ad idem, what the parties to the contract have actually agreed upon. What they have agreed upon. This has been commented upon and explained by the Supreme Court in BSNL case. It is the parties to the contract or agreement who have agreed upon certain, which will decide the nature of the transaction and the taxability. One cannot artificially call a landowner promoter, and then impose a levy of the GST on him on the sale of the share of his area before OC received by the builder. This is illegal. Whatever may be the recent amendment made to the notification providing for the ITC, assuming the validity of the levy on the landowner also, can the ITC on other services and goods be denied to him then? Can the notification prescribing the condition that only the ITC of the tax charged by the developer to the landowner will be available, and that ITC on the goods and services which are, suppose a landowner is engaged a real estate agent for selling of his property, who charges on him the GST, his chartered accountant who is doing the statutory audit, he is charged on the audit and finalization of accounts, he might be availing the host of the services. Can he be denied that credit? Whether this condition is also valid in the eyes of law? Again, these are all susceptible to challenge. My opinion is that these are not valid. Then, yeah, I'll be just finishing in 5 minutes now. Coming to the other parties, the two, while I keep this slide over here, other aspect is, what about the levy of the tax of the constructed area given by the developer to the landowner? Is it liable on the ground that the builder is receiving the consideration in the form of development rights, which is a consideration in the kind? This is a highly debatable issue. It is possible to take the stand that between landowner and the developer, the only arrangement is that I transfer the development rights to you in a certain portion of my land. This development right is nothing but the immobile property. As against that, you give me certain constructed area, which is again nothing but the immobile property. If that constructed area is given by the builder after the first occupancy or the occupancy certificate is received 100%, there cannot be any liability, whatever may the revenue share. But even if it is given before that, isn't it a transaction on both the side in immobile property? Can it not be said a barter transaction in the immobile property? In my opinion, it is definitely possible to take this stand that this is a barter in immobile property. Both the sides have not agreed to come to this. Both the sides have really not, their understanding is very clear. I pass on development rights to you, you give me certain constructed area. Now coming to the other parties, assume the validity of all this levy and tax. What it further says, the liability to pay tax arises in respect of the supply of the FSI or TDR or development rights, which is initially exempted, right? But under reverse charge, it is posed on the promoter developer in respect of those units which are sold after the complete occupation certificate, as per the notification para 2. And what is the value? The value is deemed to be equal to the total amount charged for similar apartments in the project from the independent buyers other than landowner. I'm talking about the arrangement between landowner and builder. Landowner pass on the development rights. They are presumed to be taxable, but initially exempted. Builder constructs from the sellable area, certain units are sold after CC or after first occupancy or occupancy certificate, he is selling them. And when he is selling them, he has to again work out the proportionate development rights involved into those units and then pay the tax by applying the amount of the value charged for the similar apartments in the project from the independent buyers. And it is the nearest to the date on which the DRI. And I have to go back. I have to go back to the date of the agreement when the development rights were transferred to me. Right? Where are the, is this valid? There are two ways only to look at it. One, suppose the project takes 7 years to complete and the post occupancy certificate or post completion certificate the entire, the units which are sold some after 7 years, some after 10 years, some after 15 years. It is not uncommon in the today's scenario. It happens. Now, suppose after 6 or 7 years, some units are sold post first occupancy or otherwise after the completion certificate is received. Am I supposed to go back in the time and say 6 years back, I entered into the arrangement with the landowner, and at that time when I announced my project, under construction, whatever first flat I might have sold nearest to the date of the agreement with the landowner, the JDA, am I supposed to apply that price to the proportionate development rights, which I am working out as per the formula after 7 years, and then pay the tax? This is what is proposed. This is what is being actually prescribed. This is again hopelessly illegal and unconstitutional, apart from impossible to implement. Other aspect is that the provisions is ultra vires. Section 15 does not provide for such type of determination of taxable value. If section 15 does not have the powers, you have to go to the valuation rules. To sum up, if you see rule 27 to rule 32, valuation rules today under CGST, under GST, does not even provide for the valuation when an entire consideration is in kind. Development rights is, even if treated as a consideration, it is a consideration in kind for the builder. It is 100% consideration in kind. And when there is a 100% consideration in kind, unlike service tax law, GST valuation rules are actually, miserably deficient in this regard. And there is not a single valuation provision under valuation rules which provide for the valuation of the consideration in kind, which is 100% with no monetary consideration in law. This is what actually the legal position coming to. And there is again no authority of the law whereby the value of the similar flats in the project are being sold. There is no authority which would actually empower the government to prescribe this mode of the valuation. Apart from the fact that at times it will become impossible, and therefore it will even lead to the discrimination. It is arbitrary, unreasonable. It is, apart from that, it is beyond the authority of law, and more than that, valuation provisions also do not provide for that. And as Supreme Court has said, B.C. Srinivasa Shetty, Nathuram Agarwal, Govind Saran, Ganga Saran, the four limb of a valid tax levy is the nature of the levy. We call it a taxable event. Two, the mechanism to determine the levy, that is valuation and other, rate of tax or duty, and the person liable to pay. If any of this is actually absent, the levy is unconstitutional. Here the valuation mechanism fails, and therefore the levy fails. And this is the development rights which I have actually already explained. That so friends, I will just now end my today's session over here. In the context of development rights, I will just again sum up. The landowner developer cannot be held liable to pay the tax, first of all, in respect of the area of his share, which he is selling before completion certificate. Two, FSI, supply of the FSI, TDR or development rights cannot be subjected to tax. Two, and therefore the exemption is a misnomer. Three, sale of land or sale of building, even if it is mentioned under Schedule 3, without it being mentioned also, it could not have been subjected to tax at all. The valuation mechanism applied is beyond the statutory powers, beyond constitution. Three, the builder giving the constructed area to the landowner can be treated as a barter transaction, cannot be subjected to tax. Highly debatable, I agree. But yes, because the concession between the two parties is not to that effect, to avail the services. It is a consideration in the form of constructed area given by the builder to the landowner. Landowner is not availing any services. I am giving you development right, you give me constructed area. So it can be said to be a barter into the the immobile property. And finally, when the valuation mechanism in otherwise also fails, the entire levy fails on the development rights and proportionate. And therefore, the whole right from this notification, these are the various aspects which actually now need to be carefully considered. These are to be looked into in the context of age-old principles laid down by the Supreme Court in a cadena of judicial pronouncement. I have not even gone into the treatment of the development rights under the Income Tax Act, whether it is a capital asset, what should be the date of agreement. I have not gone into that aspect because it would have been too much intricate and too much time consuming. But this is also one of these days, obviously, just like doctrine of mutuality, the income tax judgment in the context of development rights are also going to play a crucial role, whether the levy of GST on the supply of development rights is valid or not. And what is the really the nature and character of that? We have enough judgment of Kapadia, Chaturbhuj Kapadia, Chheda, Sadodai building, and the Sumer Corporation of Bombay High Court also. With this, I stop here. I'll intend to, meet you all again on the next Saturday for the rest of the topics. I will now hand it over to the, the organizers and the team. They can take over. Thank you. Thank you very much for the patient hearing.
Sir, thank you very much. Very important. Sir, you can start your video now.
Yeah.
Sir, most important, I will tell you, even now, after 1.5 hours, more than 200 people are still there. So it is, you can understand by this how grave is the situation. Sir, only my question. You told me it's a barter, so the tax should not be charged. I don't want to name the officers. You know whom all we met. I asked him very clearly कि बोले कि आप 10 पेन दो के 2 पेन खरीदोगे तो हम दोनों जगह टैक्स लगाएंगे. हम ये नहीं सोचेंगे कि अमाउंट क्या है क्या नहीं है करके. So how to overcome this situation? Because see, ultimately what happens ki we can't, our basic business is doing construction, building homes. We can't put up our time in going after these GST officials or explaining them. Because if you throw some light on this, it would be very useful for each and everyone. One. And second one is that you told we can still go on ITC. Still, is it allowed, or it was only for, if I am not wrong, it was only allowed for people who have opted it for it?
No, I will clarify very shortly. One.
Okay.
First of all, I very clearly said that I do not intend to, and I never drag my client to unnecessary litigation. Also, I'm not asking anybody to invite the litigation. I'm only suggesting, requesting that it's a time for everybody to keep their options open, to look at the whole issues from the open mind, and not to. That's why I use the word conditioned mind. One. Secondly, I don't want that we should be after revenue officer. I want that the revenue officer should be after you, if that comes to. Because that will come only when you are taking up a position in the law. After carefully examining, if I take up a particular position which the revenue officer does not agree to, then he will be after me. But if I surrender in the first instance only, obviously there is no need to. So I do not suggest that one should go and ask them anything. We have to examine independently the legal aspect and then take a stand. Whether the stand is conducive to me or not as a taxpayer, I will act upon it. It's an individual decision. I am only explaining the legal position as well. Third, when he says the barter of pen, he is comparing the two incomparables. Barter of pen, 2 pen, again 1 pencil or whatever it may be, it can be subjected to tax as a supply because both are goods. And there are some interesting European Court of Justice on the context of the levy of the weight on the barter. I have not even touched upon that. But here we are talking upon the barter in the immobile property, Rajan Bhai. Please understand. I am saying that development rights is a benefit arising out of the land. Land is covered by the immobile property definition. Therefore, when the landowner actually provides the, transfers the development rights to, he is transferring the immobile property. As against that, the constructed area which the builder is providing, it is again an immobile property because the completion certificate, which is the cutoff event, that cutoff event is only making it as a service. But that cutoff event itself has its constitutional deficiency because Schedule 2 is not a deeming fiction unlike Schedule 1. Otherwise, but for that entry, the entire transaction of sale of under construction property will not even come within the scope of Section 7. But for that, what they have done, what they should have done today, and I will not be surprised in future, suppose they do the retrospective amendment to validate the levy, Because please see the difference, significant. Under service tax, the same criteria of completion certificate, before that if anything is sold and consideration is received, is a service. That was put as a declared service, sir. Rajan Bhai, that is very important. That is a legislative prerogative. They can call it as a deemed supply, deemed service, but they declared it under section 66E. Such deeming fiction is missing today under CGST. And schedule 2 is not a deeming fiction. So therefore, and both the parties are not agreeing to availing the landowner is not availing the service. Landowner is demanding the consideration in the form of constructed area for the transfer of the specified percentage of the land development rights in favor of the builder. He is not availing the service. If the development right is a consideration for the builder, then the constructed area coming to the landowner's share is a consideration for the landowner. So here comes the consensus ad idem with both the parties have intended to. What is their objective and what they have agreed to. That is why. And coming to the option of 5% or 1%, what I am trying to say is, we have actually in the initial period, we have discussed this in detail. In the North Block also, I have said that this notification is invalid. You know that. Because you can't, I'm aghast, I'm really disturbed. Because if this trend is allowed, I don't know where this law will go. You can't mix up everything, a hybrid mixture of 11, which is a charging section, which does not allow you to prescribe conditions. You can't put a condition independently under section 11, because section 11 either allows you to prescribe the exemption or concessional rate. I cannot rate that my condition you read under section 11, you need my 1%, 5% as a tariff rate under section 9. Law does not permit that. Unless 1% or 5% is actually established as a tariff rate, it cannot be actually implemented as a mandatory rate. That is my contention. If it is not mandatory, then I go under residual entry, under construction service, and then I claim the actual value of land issue, which is already pending before the High Court. I claim actual value of the land and I claim all the ITC. Third aspect is also, how can they make a conditional exemption mandatory? If 1% or 5%, assuming everything, 1% or 5% is a concessional rate subject to certain conditions. There are a host of conditions. If you read section 11, this is actually legacy from the excise. We have, if there is an absolute unconditional exemption, the taxpayer has no option but to go for the exemption. He cannot pay the tax to avail the credit. But here, this is a conditional exemption. How can a conditional exemption be imposed on a party? Section 11 even does not apply, allow that. And therefore, I pay 18%, and therefore I go for ITC, actual value of the land. My arrangement with the buyer can be anything.
Sir, can we challenge that this thing?
Yes.
Because they are told, see, ITC is the basic fundament on which GST entire law is there, because the tax should be paid by the last person. Here that chain is getting broken at developer end only,
right?
Because we don't get ITC, and the customer is paying less, whatever. Instead of 12% is 5%, or instead of 8% is paying 1%. Can we challenge this?
Sir, Rajan bhai, you know my views on this. Entire 3/2019 notification running into 27 pages. In my opinion, practically not a single clause of that notification is valid. Not a single.
Yeah, that I know, because that's why they have taken letter from both the association, and we have given the letter.
That does not mean, sir. That would not mean anything. That would not mean in a lighter vein, even an XYZ independent player says that what my association has done, I cannot be said to be the party to that.
Yeah.
It is you see, my simple point is this, that whatever may be the compulsions, revenue consideration, I am not onto that. You do it legally. You may prescribe it, but you don't play with the law in this manner. And we should not allow them to play with the law in this manner, because we are inviting troubles for ourselves in the coming days. Please. And the validity, constitutionality, let it be settled by the court. No? Let it be. I may be proved to be wrong on the views, but at least when we challenge it, after taking an informed decision, when it is decided to challenge it, at least we will have a clarity on that.
One more thing I will tell you why we agreed at that time, because that time everybody was much more scared about
I
anti-profiteering.
know that.
Anti-profiteering was like that. People thought, but this is better way to get out of it.
I would put in other way around. Real estate has been facing its own problem for past few years. Okay, we are also having a lot of issues from other perspective, just like diamond industry. Right? It is unfortunate the government is not willing to really acknowledge that this sector has now come of the age, and the past is now past. Which industry has no, certain players who should not be there, whose practice is questionable. I'm not going into that. But you can't go on punishing me on the basis of my past, what I have done. One. Secondly, because of the economic scenario, I knew 1% and 5%, the sector felt at least it will entice the customer to come to me. Because for him, customer, how much you are charging to me, what you are doing behind you, whether ITC is available by you, what is their cost or not, I am not concerned. You are only charging me 5%. So that the dwindling sales or the pressure or the stress on the sales during the economic downfall, the last 5 years, 6 years, we had a very bad time. I can understand that played and nothing wrong in that. But this whole thing could have been gone through in a actually the legal manner. Why should they withdraw the option of ITC? You know that in the February, I told the DGGST people point blank, please, God said, don't do this. Before even this notification was announced, I said that in February when I addressed them for the entire day, I told them, please don't do this, because this will lead to the distortions and malpractices. On one side, your constitutional statement of objective says that seamless credit on everything. And here you are denying me the credit. My 18% tax paid on the CTD bar and TMT bars, 28% being paid on the painting and cement. I have to absorb it as a cost, and still you want me to pass on the benefit to the customer. And then I enter into some arrangement whereby I get this from the rolling mill in some untoward manner. Rolling mill enters into the arrangement with the furnace for ingot and billet to actually manage some supplies where the tax burden is not there. I have seen this all of you must have seen this all. This is, you give the option to the developer that you pay 12%, right, and take ITC. It is for him to tackle it with the customer. How can they take away the option of ITC and creating so much of distortion?
Sir, that's what we are demanding now. But thanks to your hard work and entire Neredco team, including Kishore Bhai, Kirti Bhai, and myself, we went and explained to them. That's why at least they gave us the option for those period for the projects which are ongoing. Otherwise, they were to seize the ITC, whatever credit was there on 1st of April, which was going to be like suicidal for entire industry.
Yeah, the only silver lining I see, because the BDA representation which I drafted, 7 points which I have drafted, the whole which is right now, I think the sector is taking up that. My indication, I'm interacting. My indication is that they have agreed upon. So I am not expecting 8% with ITC, to be very frank. Right? It is too much to expect. I was not willing to put that in my representation. But I can expect 12%, or maybe ultimately 12 and 18 will become 15%, not even 14% in my opinion. So when the single rate becomes 14 or 15%, no single rate, no, we will continue to have number of rates. In a federal polity, we can't have only one uniform GST. Forget about it. It is a utopian. One should not be daydreaming about the one single rate in another few years, unless we have a different character of the government constitutionally. So long as the federal character remains, we will not have a single uniform rate ever. But I'm expecting 12% or 14% reasonably with ITC overall. 8% can be a bonus that, what cloud and what the pressure sector can mount upon them. It will all depend upon that. But they need to restore the ITC.
We are asking for 18% and 12% with 50% land abatement instead of 1/3. Because there are so many premiums and development charges and bank interest which are actually not taxable, and we have to unnecessarily. That's why we are not.
My suggestion would be, instead of getting into the artificial, the percentage of the land deduction value of land deduction, I would suggest let it be as per the ready reckoner. Every single state has a ready reckoner. The prices of the land vary across the country. India is a vast country We can't have that artificial 50% in a second tier city or third tier or fourth tier city. Metropole in Mumbai, it is okay because 60-70% will be the ruling price of the cost of the land. We should not do that. I think it should be, let it be ready reckoner, which income tax authority is accepting, on which stamp duty is being paid. Across the country, there will be a synergy. In one case, it can be it could be hardly 20%. In another case, it could be 60%. Let it be whatever. Ultimately, you are charging extra on the land, which even constitutionally is not permissible. But artificially, to put it some sort of a 50% here and there may not work, according to me. This will require some detailed calculation and consideration.
Yes, I think, sir, there are many people who have raised their hands. Abhijit,
Yes.
if anyone from our committee member, if they want to ask anything, they can ask. Otherwise, Abhijit, then you can take questions from the people who are as attendees.
So there's one question in the Q&A. So I would request Grishma, if at all she could take it forward from here.
You're on
Grishma,
mute.
you'll have to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this one question which
Yes.
says that we are developing a leased property wherein we have 50% of the flats owned by our family members and the remaining 50% are the outsiders. Suppose if the existing area occupied is 100 square feet and after redevelopment, they will be allotted 150 square feet. Balance 150 square feet will be for the free sale. What will be the effect of GST? At which rate we have to pay GST and when?
Okay, fine.
Also, let us know if we can avail the ITC, which will be ending up paying during the course of the construction.
Okay, I think this is a part of redevelopment. Grishma, you need not even, if it is convenient, you need not read the question because I'm reading all the questions. It will also save the time. So I will only summarize the gist. So the point here is, in my next session, when I'm taking up the complete redevelopment, I will be taking. I will be taking up the redevelopment because this issue is not only for the this lease property appears to be the family owned probably, but also for the free of cost allotment, as I would call it, free of cost allotment to the society members in case of redevelopment of the society, and in case of the original occupants, in case of the SRA project or MADA project, it is basically the taxability of that whatever area agreed upon as per the agreement, which is required to be given, can it be subjected to the tax or not? That is the whole point over here. And I will deal with this in my next session because redevelopment I'm taking in detail, whether it is a lease property or own property, society property. Coming to the unit cost around 35 lakhs, how much GST we have to charge, 1% or 5%? If we charge, you see, any tax which is charged, which is more than, fundamentally, here it has nothing to do with 1% or 5%. Any amount of tax which is collected in the invoice as a tax, whether it is properly collected or not, has to be deposited with the government. That is the fundamental law. We have to keep it in mind. 76, and it is very clear in this aspect, that whenever any amount which is collected as a tax, you have to deposit it. Whether 1% or 5%, affordable housing has been well defined now. So it is an area with the value and the location also, whether the category A states or category B states, depending upon one has to decide about that. Plotted development, I'm taking plotted development in the next session in detail. Then can our industry file code in the context of non-applicability of GST to, yeah, that's what I said. That I presume your contention is that whether the levy of the GST on construction activity as a whole, whether that can be challenged. I personally feel yes, there are enough on enough counts this can be challenged. Considering the scheme of the law, it has to be carefully calibrated and considered repercussions, implications, and everything, both practical, financial, and otherwise. But simply to accept the validity of the levy on construction activity, I would not agree to that. In my opinion, even today, which I used to say in 2004-5 also, even today I say in service tax negative list also, my view was the same, that the builder is not liable to pay the tax. And today also, I'm inclined to take that view. Then GST had defined what is not goods, then it is service. Exactly, sir. Can the human beings be come under the service? Can the animals come under the service? Merely because you have to look this question about services other than goods. Anything other than goods cannot be anything and everything under the sun. You have to go to the constitution. Constitution allows the levy of GST only on the supply of goods or services or both. In that context, if something is not goods, will come under the service. Like the transfer of information, IT software, development of IT software or sale of IT software. It can be either, depending upon the contract, it can be either goods or services. But if it fails the test of the goods, it can come under service. But you cannot simply, because constitutionally land and building cannot be subjected to tax under GST. The question of treating it as under service does not arise. If TDR development right is a benefit levy, why not rent or lease also? It again depends upon, because this whole thing will probably will also be depending upon the, Supreme Court judgment also, as I said, in the Mineral Development Corporation. Leasing is again a very misunderstood and very, very loosely applied. Just as the joint development agreement, which we call between the landowner and developer, sometimes it is not even a joint development, it is a principal to principal arrangement. We very loosely connote it as a joint development. One may have to be very clear about that, whether it is a joint development or not. Development right, same way it goes to flat buyer who not ask for services, but for the flat or gala, why same not applicable? Again, I slightly lost to understand this question, but I'm only coming to the point that the supply of the development rights or transfer of development rights or TDR or FSI cannot be subjected to GST. Land always belongs to society, and the developer is only providing works contract service without land. What if we pay tax only on the development work carried out without value of land? In this, again, in the context of redevelopment, I will be taking up that to the original members, the valuation cannot be on the basis of the value of land, because the land always belong to, it is already conveyance to the society. So there, the builder is only constructing the area and giving it free of cost. It is in this context, I will deal with this question. Whether ITC reversal is required for 1/3 value of land for period prior to 1/4/2019 ongoing projects, taking the due from the section 17(2)(3) of CGST Act. I would normally like to get into the facts of the case. Prima facie, it is possible to say it is not required at all. ITC reversal is not required at all. Just as the ITC or Senvet credit reversal demand cannot be raised for the units which are sold post CC where the contracts are covered by the service tax regime. Similarly, 4/2018 notification also, 25th January 2018 notification is also absolutely irrelevant and again cannot create the levy. Let me tell you, I will just clarify here. 4/2018 notification is issued under section 148. Section 148, as I said, empowers the government to notify certain class of persons and the special procedure for the payment of tax, apart from the administration, furnishing of return and registration. Payment of tax comes only when the levy exists. If the levy does not exist, how can there be section 148? And notification 4/2018 is merely prescribing the time of supply. In case of the payment of tax on the development rights, it is only a time of supply. It prescribes. It cannot create the levy. If the levy is absent, 4/2018 cannot be a ground to demand the tax from the taxpayer. Any charges, this is a facts-based question. If I go by this, any other charges collected post CC where the tax liability, if the unit is sold before under construction and the tax is paid and some additional charges are collected in the connection with that supply, then section 15 valuation section clearly provides that the value of supply shall also include any amount collected before, during or after, so long as the nexus is maintained with the supply. This is again a facts-based case. But if the entire unit is sold after completion certificate and where the tax itself is not payable at all, In that case, other charges, if they do not constitute independent supply, taxable supply, then that other charges will not attract the levy of tax. Again, sir, broadly I have discussed, these appears to be the individual questions. Anyway, Abhijit ji, I would also request you to forward me all these entire chat box or question answers.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, please, because I'll try to see that if I can also cover it up in the second session, or we may try to find out some via media or other alternate media to deal with all these questions, unless
Sure,
it is too much facts based.
Sir, we will prepare the entire gist of questions like
Yeah.
an FAQ.
Yeah,
And we can then,
the complete, you can send me the complete chat box as it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Answer.
Yes,
Without
yes,
any editing
yes.
or nothing, I will take care of that.
Yes, 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 yes.
And okay, I think this ends here. There is something on the chat box. Okay.
Malik bhai?
Yes, I think this covers. Yeah, 3 participants raise hands. They can ask the question. I mean, Abhijit ji, you coordinate. Grishma ji, aap coordinate.
I'll just ask Raju Kumar sir to raise the question first. Mr. Raju Kumar, can you please unmute yourself and put the question? Mr. Pankaj Agarwal, anyone? I mean, like, yeah, Pankaj ji, please put your question.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sir, in the typical JDA agreement, the scenario would be that the landowner transfers his development right to the developer,
Yes.
and the developer gives the construction or of a flat or a commercial property as per their mutual understanding. So now, if the developer allotted the flat before completion, so now one view which strongly you are saying that there would not be taxation on it. That view can be taken, and in a case that it is allotted after the completion, so that is one scenario, that the developer is allotting the land during the construction period, and the developer is allotting the land allotting a flat after completion certificate is received. And now if the developer is allotting the flat before completion and the landowner sells his allotted flat during that construction period. So whether now the question answer will be changed, sir, that the developer is.
That's what actually I understand that I dealt with it in detail. A landowner cannot be subjected to the levy of tax at all on the ground that he is selling his area, his share of area during construction, under construction. You can't artificially, declare somebody as a taxable person by inventing or coining a description landowner promoter.
Okay.
And put it at the par with the builder promoter. I cannot call, just because I coined this description, it does not become a taxable person. Where is the, if you see very carefully, does he undertake any construction service?
No.
He may be selling. His under construction unit, which is coming to his share, is meant for sale. He is selling it also. But is he really constructing a unit which is meant for sale?
No, he is only selling the units which
Right.
was allotted to him.
How can be a landowner subjected to the tax? Under what?
Okay.
Under which authority of law?
Okay, so for the construction services given by the developer to the landowner, on that part, whether that will be works
That is a
contract?
debatable issue. Whether it will come under works contract, can it be treated as a barter transactions? Still, I have a very strong view. Okay, at least if not on anything else, that particular levy can also be subjected to serious challenge on the aspect of the valuation. Just as the aspect of valuation of the proportionate development rights on account of the units being sold post CC is a seriously challengeable issue. The construction survey, because it can be then works contract only. Please, it cannot be the construction service. The 1/3 value cannot apply. Our landowner, builder is undertaking the construction service at worst, which is a works contract covered by section 2 subsection 119. So then it will be a cost of construction. It can't be the value of the similarly sold flat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As a worst case scenario.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I guess most of the people who had raised their hand had put the question in the Q&A section box.
Hmm.
So now I don't see anybody who has raised their hand. So I guess we can move forward if you
Yes,
would
yes,
not
please.
mind.
Yeah. People would also be slightly now.
Yes,
Yes. So can I request Mr. Maulik Bhai to propose a word of thanks for today's session, please?
Thank you, Abhijit. I would like to thank the entire NAREDCO team for organizing and hosting this lovely seminar, a webinar. And as usual, Shailesh bhai, your sessions are highly engaging and enlightening. And like we had Thakur in Sholay to counter Gabbar Singh, we have you here to counter this Gabbar Singh tax.
Thank you.
Shailesh bhai.
Yeah.
And we look forward to you for giving us the guidance in terms of how to tackle this GST matter. And I'm sure all the members and the participants had a very lovely time listening to you, and we look forward to having you next Saturday too. And I would like to also inform all the members that we are coming up with many more sessions like this on not only on GST but on IT and other various aspects of real estate. And last but not the least, thank you NAREDCO Next Gen team for conducting this session, and Rajan bhai and Ashok bhai for being a part of it. Thank you all, and have a lovely Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shailesh Bhai.
Thank you very much. Yes. Shall I leave?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.